Welcome to the Tuesday, April 25th, 2023 regular closed session meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Sorry.
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Chan.
Here.
Director Lenny. Here. Director McIntosh.
Here.
Director Patterson.
Present.
Director Young.
I'm here.
President Katz.
Here. If members of the public are online and wish to make public comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comments on agenda and non-agenda items will be heard at this time. Madam Secretary, are there any hands for public comment?
I had one hand for public comment. See if the hand is going to go back up. The hand is back up. I have Lana Coleman. Ms. Coleman, you should be able to unmute your mic and your 3 minutes will start now.
Do you hear me first, Risha?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Directors, I have notified you of multiple errors made by multiple employees. I have said nobody who should have understood your retirement ordinance actually did. Now to review the board ethics policy, which requires you to act. To ignore this information, as you appear to have done so far, is to be in violation of your own ethics policy. I will disclose the names of 7 individuals I'm aware of who either stated or were silent when it was stated in their presence. EBMUD may only provide reciprocity if CalPERS extends reciprocity. In truth, this is not in the ordinance and is false. Before I list the names, how did I, here on the outside, with only access to your website, determine the ordinance didn't work as your employees indicated? It's simple. I read it. In HR, Valerie Weekly, Mae Shepard, Conana Gregory, Lisa Serrani. In legal, Lourdes Matthew and Derek McDonald. Finally, Clifford Chan. In Lisa's case, CalPERS gave Lisa accurate information. She did not share it with the general counsel. Not known without investigating is whether she shared with Lourdes and Clifford, with all of them deciding to hide it, or whether Lisa acted alone. Hiding information and not knowing one's job represent violations of policy and negligence and mismanagement. Now for the ethics policy verbatim. The GM has primary responsibility for ensuring compliance with personnel policies and procedures, for investigating allegations of improper activities, and for taking appropriate corrective and disciplinary actions. Board members will not interfere with identifying, investigating, and correcting improper activities unless the board determines the general manager is not properly carrying out these responsibilities. Of course, in this case, he cannot because he himself is one of the alleged violators. Lastly, on violations of ethics policy, what can happen if the board does not thoroughly investigate how such policy infractions and negligence occurred and take actions to correct? A violation of this policy may be addressed by remedies available by law, including but not limited to 1, adoption of a resolution expressing disapproval of the conduct of the board member who's violated. Well, that's all of you, and that it's not a choice open to me. Number 2, injunctive relief, which is too expensive. Or 3, referral of the violation to the district attorney and or the watchdog grand jury. To conclude, the policy clearly states its board responsibility to identify, investigate, and correct improper activities, such as those I've identified repeatedly. I've known and respected some of you for many years, and I know you value being an ethical board member. I trust every one of you takes your responsibilities seriously and will not disregard the ethics policy. That's all. Thank you.
Are there any additional hands for public comment?
Need 1 moment. There are no other hands for public comment.
I see a public comment in person. I will call on Yvette Rivera. If there's no further comment for the closed session meeting. Okay, Yvette Rivera.
1 moment. Let me just pass this to you.
Thank you.
Are
Thank you, Board. I'm glad you have the document in hand. I assume everybody does. Oh, we still have two more. May I start?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for this time. I've provided you two documents. One is called the First Amendment Coalition Public Records Act Primer. It's only a few pages of it. I didn't want to print it all out. If you want to look it up, it's on the web. Behind that document is Ariel Bland's, at the end of that document is Ariel Bland's application for employment. The district has refused to provide me any employment applications that I asked for. You may have heard from Derek McDonald that he provided something, but this is what an employment application looks like. And the district has refused to provide me any employment applications. The second document I provided you was my civil rights lawsuit from 2015. I only am providing you the fourth cause of action, which is the Monell claim. Basically everything that Lana Coleman's talking about the board's responsibility, is kind of laid out in that Monell claim when I filed in 2015. The board's responsibility to follow through and enforce policies and procedures, not only of local government, but of the state of California and the federal government. The last thing I wanted to mention, I wanted to give everybody an update on the Saji Pierce, Ariel Bland, I want to call it the Ku Klux Klan civil rights lawsuit that's coming up in 4 weeks. There has been an additional law firm added to that lawsuit. And even though Director Linney may have wanted to say a couple of years ago that everything's been investigated and there was basically no grounds, this law firm called J. Bernard Alexander at Morrison in Los Angeles just won a civil rights lawsuit against Tesla. And Tesla's going to pay supposedly $137 million to an ex-worker over a hostile work environment claim. I'm going to just end by saying that I'm going to be walking over to my copy store. They've been making a lot of money from me for the past 10 years. And I'm going to be providing the district all of these confidential documents that were given to the court. The Exhibit 11, David Briggs' determination against Pierce. It's going to be great to hear that in court and hear Director Briggs talk about it. Risha Cole's determinations for Bland in 2020, Pierce in 2020, and Pierce again in 2019. Corrine's emails, Acosta's emails. The email, I'm going to be giving you the email that says they're trying to hide the check that Spencer got for his personal attorney. I'm going to end this by saying it's unfortunate that Lana Coleman has to come to this board, but she hasn't learned yet that there is no moral compass at East Bay MUD. And we're going to really get to see, we're going to pull back that cloak, that invisibility cloak that the district has thrown on everything on May 22nd, on a 100th anniversary. Thank you.
Ms.
I
Rivera.
yield.
We will now convene to discuss closed session agenda items. We are scheduled to return for our regular meeting at 1:15 p.m. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 25th, 2023 regular business meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. We will receive reports from this morning's Finance and Administration Committee and our Long-Term Water Supply Workshop number 2 meetings under item 18. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Present.
Director Coleman,
Present.
Director Chan,
Here.
Director Linney,
Here.
Director McIntosh,
Here.
Director Patterson,
Present.
Director Young,
Here.
President Katz.
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The board met in closed session this morning to consider a request by the Office of General Counsel to initiate a litigation, to authorize initiation of litigation in one matter. All directors were present at the closed session. The directors voted to authorize the Office of General Counsel to initiate litigation in the matter. The action, defendants, and other particulars will be disclosed upon inquiry once the action is formally commenced. There were no other announcements required from closed session. We now move to public comment. If members of the public are online and wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. I will call comments on non-agenda items now. Comments on agenda items will be heard later when the item is up for consideration. Madam Secretary, are there any public comments on non-agenda items at this time?
I have one hand raised for public comment. I'm going to see. Lana Coleman, you should be able to unmute your mic. Is this a non-agenda item?
Yes, it is. Risha, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Your 3 minutes are going to start now.
Okay, I really wish I didn't have to do this again, but this is, as directors know, this is the only means of communication you have left to me. I've notified you of multiple errors made by multiple employees. I have said to you, nobody who should have understood your retirement ordinance actually did. Now to review the board ethics policy, which requires you act. To ignore this information, as you appear to have done so far, is to be in violation of your own ethics policy. I will disclose the names of 7 employees I'm aware of who've either stated or were silent when it was stated in their presence that EBMUD may only provide reciprocity if CalPERS extends reciprocity. In truth, this is not in the ordinance and it is false. Before I list the names, how did I, and here on the outside, only access to your website, how did I determine the ordinance wasn't as 7 employees said it was? It's simple. I printed it and I read it. In HR, Valerie Weekly, May Shepard, Conana Gregory, Lisa Serrani. In legal, Lourdes Matthew and Derek McDonald. Finally, Clifford Chan, all were of the mindset of that quote and the false information and repeated it to us. In Lisa's case, CalPERS gave Lisa accurate information. She did not share it with the general counsel. At this point, it's not known whether without an investigation, whether she shared it with Lourdes and Clifford or anyone else, and they all decided to hide it, or whether Lisa acted alone. Hiding information, not knowing one's job, these represent violations of policy and negligence and mismanagement. So now for the ethics policy verbatim. The GM has primary responsibility for ensuring compliance with personnel policies and problems. Oops, that's a Freudian slip. Has responsibility for ensuring compliance with personnel policies and procedures, for investigating allegations of improper activities, and for taking appropriate corrective and disciplinary action. Board members will not interfere with identifying, investigating, and correcting proper activities unless the board determines the general manager is not properly carrying out these responsibilities. Of course, in this case, he can't, because he himself is one of the alleged violators. Lastly, on violations of ethics policy, what can happen if the board does not thoroughly investigate how such policy infractions and negligence occurred and take actions to correct? Well, the ethics policy says that a violation may be addressed by remedies available by law, included but not limited to 1, adopting a resolution expressing disapproval of the conduct of the board member who's violated this policy, but that would be all of you, and it's not a choice open to me. 2nd, injunctive relief, which is far too expensive. And 3rd, referral of the violation to the district attorney and or the grand jury, which is charged with oversight of boards such as yours. To conclude, the policy clearly states it's board responsibility to identify, investigate, and correct improper activities such as those I have identified. I have known and respected some of you for many years, and I know you value being ethical board members. I trust every one of you to take your ethics responsibilities seriously and that you will not disregard this infraction of ethics policy. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, are there any additional comments online on non-agenda items?
There are no other hands for public comment.
Thanks. Are there any in the room? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent calendar.
One moment. We have one in the room. I did not have a card. I just had paperwork. Thank you.
We will take the comment from the public. Yvette Rivera.
And the 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you for your time. This morning I spoke at the meeting. I provided a few documents. One of the documents I provided was my 2015 civil rights lawsuit against the district and against the board members, all of the board members except April Chan and Marguerite Young, because she wasn't here yet. I provided the district a copy of the Monell claim in that lawsuit. And let me just read what a Monell claim is. It allows plaintiffs a method to sue municipalities for unconstitutional policies and practices that led to an incident that harmed an individual or group. Listening to Lana Coleman speak, it just reminds me that the district's inaction affects quite a few people that are associated with East Bay MUD. I'm providing you 3 documents in this meeting. One is the Saji Pierce. It's a document that contains quite a few confidential documents that were provided to the court. I have it titled Subject to Stipulated Protective Order, Confidential, but of course it's no longer confidential once it's handed out in a board meeting. The other document I provided you was the PERB complaint that was referenced by the union at the end of the year, one of them. And what I attached to it was 2 employees' performance appraisals. At the last board meeting, I spoke about how appraisals were weaponized, and it's pretty clear to see what kind of impact the ratings that these 2 employees received would affect their career. I'm going to close out by reading a couple of the documents that were provided to the court. Really, we have documents that have Risha Cole's name on it as the person who wrote determination letters for Bland and Pierce on 3 occasions. We have a determination letter in this file by David Briggs. We have a text from Derek to Saji. I don't know if I included Marguerite Young's part of her deposition, but really my favorite document, and I put it on the top, and I'll be reading from this throughout the year. It's right after the cover sheet. And in it, it's an email from Anna Gunderson to Corrine Darrow. Hi, Corrine. Craig has instructed me to work with you on navigating the various requirements for promotion to Attorney 2, aiming for the first of the year change. This is my favorite part, okay, because this shows how the district is capable of positioning whoever they want to get these promotions. He has already given me the memos that John and Rachel wrote for an Attorney 3 promotion and instructed me on how to write something similar but appropriate for my hopeful transition. I know the time has already clicked off. I'm going to just leave this by saying there's quite a few eye-opening documents in this package I gave you. I'm looking for the trial that starts in 4 weeks with the new attorney, Alexander Morrison, that's going to be sitting next to attorney Bobby Shukla. And I'm going to be there on May the 22nd.
Thank you, Ms. Rivera.
Thank you. I yield.
Are there any other comments from the public about non-agenda items?
I have no other hands for public comment.
Thank you. We move to the consent calendar. We do have an amendment to the consent calendar, and I'll let Clifford cover that first.
Yeah, so for item 7, there is a correction, not on 7.1, but on 7.2 of item 7. The version that was posted online stated that Locals 21 and 2019 were notified on March 19th, 2020, and it should have said May 11th, 2020. Otherwise, nothing else has changed. And you have the revised version at your places.
Okay, Director Coleman.
Yes, I'd like to pull items 3 and 11, please.
Any other amendments to the consent calendar?
Move the remainder of the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved by Director McIntosh and seconded by Director Linney to approve items 1 and 2, 4 through 6, 8 through 10,
7.
7 too.
and 13,
Also including 7?
and including 7, as amended at our places. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? The motion carries. Item number 3.
Thank you very much. I support the, what needs to be done with Kratos Incorporated for the construction of Wildcat pipeline improvement, El Cerrito. My question is, so we're going to be putting in a major pipeline in order to improve the reliability of our water system. What are we doing with all the trench spoils for that? Are they going to go back in the ground, or are they going to be taken off site and not used?
Let me find, Jimmy, do you know what the contractor is going to do for that project?
Thank you. The trench soils for this project are the responsibility of the contractor. We don't know specifically where they're taking it to, but it will be off-hauled from the site. It could be a landfill, could be a beneficial reuse, but it is their responsibility, and that is part of the terms of the contract.
Okay.
Question.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
So is it a possibility that the contractor is actually going to take the soil to one of our sites?
No, that is not one of the options available to them.
Is it a possibility they're going to put some of the soil back in the trench?
That is a possibility if they have the options of how to dispose of the soil or reuse it. It's that is part of the terms of the contract for them to decide.
And so if they did that, would they actually put all of the soil back, put 50% of it back?
It depends on the situation, but Gus might be able to answer this for me.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gus Shikala, project manager for the design. Around the pipe itself and the street aggregate base will need to be engineered and brought in from off-site. But in between that, they may be able to reuse. On another project, they've asked for an acceptance to reuse some of the native soil because it meets our certain. We have criteria for a select backfill. If the native is up to our standards, they can ask to be able to use that and give us a credit for not needing to off-haul and bring in engineered fill.
Okay, and so when, just the same question.
Yeah, so it depends on how deep it is, right? So it's a 3-foot diameter pipe, and 6 inches above that is the embedment, and then 18 inches below the street is the subgrade for the street. So where it's really shallow, it's a little bit that they may be able to reuse. Where it's deep, it could be quite a bit, many feet.
Oh, so it's variable, like from...
Yeah, but again, it's designed for engineered backfill, and they would need to request an exception to that.
Okay, thank you so much.
I actually have a question along that. What is engineered backfill? Is it using compacted soil? Is it using soil with gravel, sand? What exactly is it versus the soil they're taking out of the street where the current pipeline is?
Yeah, it varies whether it's it's usually a class 2 aggregate base, so it's like 3/4 inch, and that's for the aggregate base like below the street. A lot of times that's dictated by the city's standards, so it's a road base. And then around the pipe, they can use like a sand backfill, or they can use a cement slurry backfill and import that. It's kind of a light strength cement mix that they can use around the pipe.
Thank you for that. I guess I would like to know, because we obviously dealt with this issue with the quarry, and we have had issues before on back soil and trench spoils. How often do we reuse the soil? 1, 2, When we can't, why? And 3, can we make it so we can? I'm not talking about it, just in general in this case.
Yeah, as far as generally speaking, I mean, we can share with the board the prior pilots that we've done. As part of going forward, we're going to relook at if there's any new technologies that we can better reuse the materials that can meet our engineering standards. But maybe in the short term, I can share with the board the pilots that we have done.
Okay.
Perhaps you can put that in a memo for us?
As an info memo, that's what I mean.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for raising the issues, Directors Coleman and Chan. While I think, I have experience with this type of project, having been involved in some of the early and mid project community outreach for the project for this phase, as well as the phase that went through Berkeley. More familiar with the mitigations that have proven to be successful in some of the trial and error that occurred on the Berkeley segments, and trust that we've learned those lessons, and will be prepared to do a good job working with the contractor in the city of El Cerrito. I don't mean to say that things didn't go well. It generally did go well. There were a few incidents, so I do trust that we'll work with the contractor so that we manage what will be a very major project affecting day-to-day life for residents. For for a typical resident, it could affect their day-to-day life pretty significantly for about a week or two. So don't take that lightly, but we do need to revitalize our system and to make sure that we have a world-class system that lasts another 100 years. I take the issue pretty seriously, that while contracting out this large project, we shouldn't avoid responsibility for the trench soils that are associated with it. It's a bit late in the process for this particular project, but I think we should be thinking about the full downstream effects of our trench soils impacts when we do this work. So while we do analyze it at the EIR level, as we're doing a really comprehensive planning process for trench soils, I think we should be thinking about this scope of contracted work when those plans go to the planning committee. So I just wanted to encourage for this type of work, not this project specifically, but other contracted projects that involve major pipeline work or that have major trench soils quantities, that we be planning for it and having some understanding about our impacts and how we're managing it in the most sustainable way possible. So I just wanted to refer that comment.
Yes, I mean, we can share. I mean, certainly for the larger projects, and Jimmy, you can correct me, I mean, like the Orinda Water Treatment Plant, when we do have a lot of trench soils, all that is addressed in our CEQA documents, and we do share that with the planning committee, and we do bring it to the board for review, and we can make sure we highlight that in the future.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on item number 3?
I'm just going to do a quick little segue. I'm cool on number 3, but I appreciate the fact that EBMUD has reached out to BCDC. I talked to Brenda Gaden yesterday. She's the head of beneficial reuse, essentially dredge management spoils. And they met, I guess, last week with staff, said that we have a need of about 50,000 cubic yards disposal. And she talked about the sites that might be able to be used for beneficial reuse along the shoreline. So, and apparently there's going to be discussions next week as well. So I'll be curious to see how those discussions go, rather than calling Brenda to ask if we could get an update on that.
We do have planning plan for an upcoming planning committee to provide an update to the committee on our trench soils options that we're evaluating, and that will be included in that.
Thank you. I also pulled item number, go ahead.
Shall we take a vote on item number 3 since it was pulled?
Taken and vote on 7 yet either.
We did include 7
Okay,
in the
I'll
whole
move
thing.
item 3.
Moved by Coleman, seconded by Director Linney. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The motion carries. Item number 11.
Thank you. This is to extend Bloomberg Terminal Agreement. And I know it's to increase that amount by $175,000 in order to have faster trading abilities and not go back to the old way of doing it. We pay a lot of firms buku bucks basically to watch what we're doing, what we trade, how we trade, and when we trade. But now we're looking at needing to want to get an agreement with Bloomberg to have quicker trading. Is that what it is?
This is actually we've had a contract for several years now. We decided to put a Bloomberg terminal in place. Staff had come to me at that time and said, you know, we're not getting full transparent market pricing because we go through brokers and they're taking a cut. And so we believe that for, you know, what we're paying, that we're going to save much more by having access to the terminal so that we can see the transparent pricing ourselves rather than just believing the broker or trying to call several brokers and, you know, kind of triangulate. So we got the terminal, and we have found that we are receiving better pricing now that we can tell the broker, hey, look, we know what this is trading for, so no, we're not interested in that piece at that price. So this is just extending the contract for an additional 5 years. They did give us a break. The first, contract we were paying $26,000 a year roughly, and in this second 5-year term, both software contracts have gone up, and we talked about that during the budget workshops. But it is about a 30%, increase to about $35,000 a year. So this is an extension of a contract. It is much higher. It is reflective of the fact that software contract prices are going up, but ultimately it's a net savings to the district to have the terminal in that we have transparent pricing, and so we're not paying that on the other end.
I understand the transparent pricing. Thank you, Sophie. I guess I have a little concern how your comment was that some of the people we use in order to make decisions on where we make investments and when to take, to put in, aren't giving us the full information that we need in order to make those accurate assessments. So do we need to look at using different entities for doing just that?
No, it's just a broker, and so they're offering something at a certain price, and you can either decide to buy it or not. So, but it's a good question.
Director Yale?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with colleagues when I was in our capital stewardship program that had access to a Bloomberg terminal, and it was a phenomenal benefit in terms of research and understanding and moving transactions. And, sadly, the market is made for people to make money, and we're the people they make money off of as long with other investors. And the Bloomberg terminal is one way of demystifying and basically looking under the hood, like if you have one of those code readers for your car to see what's actually wrong with it, that the dealer might hide from you. That's basically what it is. And as a basis point, how many basis points does it cost us to have the Bloomberg terminal?
Yeah, less than a basis point.
Less than a basis point. Well less.
Yes.
Probably
yes.
a tenth of a basis point.
Yes.
Really.
I don't recall this having come before the Finance Committee.
It came up to the Finance Committee the first time that when we put the Bloomberg terminal into effect, but we didn't bring it back to the Finance Committee this time. But we'll make a note that every time that we move forward to make a recommendation to move forward with a contract like this, that we will come back in the future. Thank you for that. Also, there is a possibility. Bloomberg is the company today, and now you have to have a terminal, but the world is changing every day, and there may be free platforms available one day that do the same thing, but at this time this is the best available tool.
Thank God we didn't go into Bitcoins.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Coleman, seconded by Director Linney to approve item number 11. Any further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? The motion carries. We move to determination and discussion, items 14 through 17. General Manager Chan.
Yes, so the first item is to update the East Bay MUD Retirement System's actuarially assumed rate of return from 7% to 6.75%. The assumed rate of return was updated based on the recommendation of the Retirement System's actuary, Siegel Group. On January 19th, the Retirement Board adopted the recommendation. The board will need to amend the ordinance number 40 to reflect the change. We have Lisa Serrani here, our Manager of Employee Services, to provide the first reading. There is no action required today from the board. Lisa?
Thank you. Thank you, Clifford. And good afternoon, President Katz and members of the board. Clifford read most of what I'm going to say, so there's not a whole lot more to say. But yes, we are here today to do a first reading of an amendment to the EBMUD Employees Systems Retirement, which is Ordinance 40. And there is no action today, just a reading. So the Retirement Board on January 19th, 2023, adopted a new assumed rate of return for the EBMUD Employees Retirement System. This change then requires a corresponding change to our retirement ordinance. The actuarial rate of return is used for a couple of things in our pension. It calculates the optional beneficiary allowance in Section 21. It is used when we calculate cash outs of member contributions. It's also one of the factors looked at when we post interest to employee accounts. Section 21 is the section that provides for an optional modification of a member's retirement allowance to provide an actuarially equivalent allowance for a surviving beneficiary. And Section 21 is where the amendment will be. So, as our GM stated, the Siegel Group is the district's retirement plan actuaries. They recommended this change to our assumed rate of return from 7% down to 6.75% in our November 22nd, 22 retirement board meeting in preparation for their, meaning the actuaries, 2022 annual actuarial valuation. It was brought back to our January meeting, and the retirement board adopted the proposed rate in our January 19th, 2023 meeting. So the requirement for making the change in our retirement ordinance is related to an IRS requirement. They require that actuarial assumptions that are used to determine optional forms of benefits be specifically specified in our retirement ordinance. So the proposed update to Section 21 of our Ordinance 40 will ensure that our language in our ordinance is consistent with the change adopted by the Retirement Board in January. So there's a few steps for us to make changes to our retirement ordinance. Our first reading is today. We take a second reading and an adoption vote on May 9th, 2023. We then have a requirement to place this ordinance amendment in a newspaper for 2 successive weeks. After that, it will take effect 30 days after the vote to adopt. So if you vote to adopt, that would happen on May 9th. The ordinance amendment will actually take effect on June 9th, 2023. Thank you, and I'll see you back on May 9th.
Questions? Okay, we've done a similar action to bring our retirement ordinance and our fiduciary expectations back to reality, and we have no action required because it's a first reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have our water supply availability and deficiency report to report on our 2023 water supply. Brad Ledesma, our Manager of Water Resources Planning, will provide the report.
Good afternoon. You should be able to.
Okay. Good afternoon, President Katz and other members of the board. Staff is pleased to present the final water supply availability and deficiency report. We're going to start by giving you a status of the district's water demands. Then we'll walk through the current water supplies. We'll talk about anticipated flow obligations and then recommended actions for the board to consider. Here's a graphic showing demands. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see that there's total system demand in MGD. And then on the lower right-hand corner, you'll see the percentage change in demand as the bars. So the dark solid line represents the demand for calendar year 2022. And then the green is calendar year 23 because it's moving into the next calendar year. And the dashed line represents the demand from calendar year 2020. And you can see that the solid line is lower than the dashed line because our customers are responding to our request for conservation. And looking at the two numbers at the top, key takeaway is our demands for calendar year 2022 are about 10% lower than our calendar year 2020 demands, so our customers are meeting our objectives. Let's take a look at water supplies. Let's start by looking at precipitation as of April 2019. We have two charts here. One on the left is the East Bay, and the one on the right is the McCollum watershed. On the y-axis, we have inches of rainfall. The boxes you see there represent the average condition, and the blue bars represents the actual rainfall that was seen in that month. Key takeaway here is that we have well over 100% of average rainfall both in the East Bay and the McCollum watershed. Let's now take a look at snowpack. On the left, we have snow water equivalent. Focus in on the Central Sierra, and you can see that we're 246% of average. Looking at that also in terms of snow depth, you can see Caples Lake. You can see the red line represents the depth of snow for this year, and that's it's a lot higher than the dashed line you see there represents average conditions. It's even higher than in 2017. If you look at total system storage, the table on the left-hand side, total storage is about 600,000 acre feet as of April 19th. You can see that Part E is actually over 100%. That's not an error. We actually manage it for water quality and cold water pool, and that helps support that. But total system storage is at 600,000 acre feet, about 95% full as of April 19th. Now looking at the chart on the right-hand side, that's our forecasted total system storage in thousands of acre feet. That solid dark line represents the actual storage moving through time, and then the dashed lines that you see on the right-hand side represent our forecast coming from our models. And you can see that at the end of the water year, they all end at 630,000 acre feet. That's because we're following a rule curve, but that's well above the drought trigger of 475,000 acre feet.
And Brad, maybe just a quick correction. It's 95% of average, not full.
Correct.
So we're only 78% full.
Correct. Thank you. Let's take a look at our water supply obligations. So these are water supply flow release obligations for 2023 as a result of the hydrologic conditions. So based off Department of Water Resources Bulletin 120 runoff for the McCollum River and end of September total system storage, the joint settlement agreement year type is normal and above. This means that we have full entitlements and requests available for Woodbridge Irrigation District of a base supply of 60,000 acre feet, Jackson Valley Irrigation District, and North San Joaquin Water Conservation District. We also have surplus water that's available for our current projects. We'll notify the resource agencies in accordance with the joint settlement agreement. We also have supply available for completing our DREAM pilot and also if we chose to do baseline groundwater project injection. So the staff is asking the board to consider two actions. One, file the water supply availability and deficiency report and declare that the district's water supply is sufficient for meeting customer demands in 2023. And that concludes.
Those actions.
Moved by Director Young, seconded by Director Patterson. All those in favor of item number 15?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I meant to also include item number 16, I believe. Is that?
Yeah, so based on the water supply availability and deficiency report and the fact that we're projecting to be full by the end of the water year, we are recommending that we move to a stage 0, rescind the 10% voluntary water use reduction, and suspend the implementation of our water shortage emergency action plan. Brad has a very brief presentation, and the board can take a single vote on all three items. Brad?
I'll clarify that. Yeah, 15 and 16 are separate actions, but 16.1, 16.2, and 16.3 can be considered together if we agree. Please go ahead.
We thought we would start by giving an overview of the drought response actions that the board implemented. Due to dry conditions in April of 2021 via resolution, the board moved into stage 1 drought, voluntary 10%, and then moved towards purchasing CVP supply and started promoting conservation. But between April 2021 and April 2022, drought conditions worsened quite a bit. In fact, the governor issued executive orders, And in response, the board adopted resolution that went into water shortage, declared a water shortage emergency, went into stage 2 drought. We adopted section 28, approved a mandatory 10% conservation target, and then implemented the excessive use ordinance. Then a month later, in May of 2022, the board, by motion, approved the Water Shortage Emergency Action Plan. That's the plan that basically set out how we were going to achieve that stage 2 drought condition. And then we also implemented the drought surcharge of 8%. Then between May of 2022 and February of 2023, we had extreme wet conditions. And you all saw that in that previous presentation that we gave. So in February of 2023, via motion and resolution, the board suspended the drought surcharge effective March 1st of this year. And then within 30 days of the state taking action, would move to stage 1, go to voluntary 10%, rescind section 28, and then suspended the excessive use ordinance. But those regulations now have changed since February when we last met. So in March of this year, the governor issued a new order which essentially lifted requirements for water shortage level 2 mandatory response actions. It lifted the requirement for a 15% statewide conservation goal, left some things in place like continuing to groundwater recharge and encouraging conservation as a way of life. And then based off the final water supply availability and deficiency report we just presented to you, again, total system storage is at 630,000 acre feet, even under 99% exceedance condition. And then the projected total system is well above our drought management triggers. There are still 3 drought response actions in effect. The first one is we're still in the stage 1 drought. We've asked for voluntary water use reduction goal of 10%. And we're still implementing the district's water shortage emergency action plan. So staff's recommending that the board consider a resolution directing the following actions: rescinding the stage 1 and then declaring a stage 0, so basically ending the drought, and then rescinding a voluntary district-wide 10% water use reduction goal, and then suspending implementation of the water shortage emergency action plan, effective May 10th.
I'll move the item 16.1 through 16.3.
I just have a question. So I'm just wondering, this morning we talked about conservation for a large part of the meeting. And so I was just wondering about item 2.
Yeah.
I mean, why are we going to 0? And I thought that in the past we had discussed staying at stage 1 as opposed to going to stage 0. So I'm just wondering about the reasoning behind that.
So there's 2 reasons. One being that we do have conservation as a way of life. We implement a lot of different conservation programs and we work with our customers to reduce that. But we also don't want to desensitize our customers to future requests for conservation. So if you're always in a state of voluntary conservation, later when you go to ask for it, they may not respond. So in this way, it helps make sure that they're not desensitized to the request for conservation moving forward.
And so within our plan itself, when you go to stage 0, it is wise water use. But we're not asking customers, but either voluntarily or in a mandatory fashion, to cut back.
We also know, as was talked about earlier, that it takes sometimes years to even go back to what the past water usage was because habits have changed.
Yeah, it could take up to 9 to 10 years before we recover.
Before we take a vote, it's been moved by Director Coleman and seconded by, do we have that for the record? Director Patterson. I'll ask, are there any comments from the public?
No comments from the public online.
Okay. And seeing none in the room, I will call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? The motion carries.
And I'll note that at your places it will be the last excessive use report for this drought. For the next item, we want to share with you the employees who received service awards between January and March 2023. We have Chad Thigpen here, our Senior Human Resources Analyst, to provide the presentation.
If you're having trouble finding yours, hold on.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to present, as Clifford said, the names of employees who have received service awards. As you can see, this list, yeah, thank you. This list is going to include employees who have hit certain milestones between January and March. I just want to take a moment to recognize the employees who stay at the district and continue to serve. Their years of service at the district reflect their commitment and loyalty. Here you have 35 years of service and 30 years of service. They add value over time that they stay at the district. We have the 25 years of service and 20 years of service here. Here.
The presentation is transitioning on its own, so we can control. We can either control it with the arrows.
Okay. Okay. And this is 15 years of service. And as we look at these names, just want to recognize, some of these employees in these pictures you might know. And so if you run into these employees, take a moment to congratulate them for their commitment and loyalty to the organization. With this commitment and staying with the district over time, they only contribute more through their experience, their relationships that they develop, the trust they build, their institutional knowledge that they share. It really makes a difference in terms of meeting the district's mission and providing high quality water and wastewater services in the Bay Area. So I just also wanted to just comment that the average age of service is 46.6, and that the average years of service is 10.4. And with that, just want to thank you for the time to recognize these employees and their service at the district.
I just have a question. I seem to recall that when I first joined the board that the average years of service was in the 20s. So if we drop, the turnover of retirement has actually halved, more than halved.
Maybe Derek can provide more exact numbers, but yeah, we've seen a significant number of retirements in the last several years.
I understand that. I just like that's a dramatic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The average tenure about 6 to 7 years ago was about in the 20 to 25 year range. Right. So it has dropped dramatically. We still have a significant number, as you can see, significant number of employees that are hitting the 25, 20, 35, and 30 year thresholds. So we still have another potential cycle of retirements that we still have going.
And are we seeing departures? So are people, once they're here, are we seeing that same sort of folks stay once they're here happening?
Yeah, our turnover rate is going up, but it's not significant right now.
That's
the term
I was looking for, turnover rate.
Yeah, we are tracking that, but it hasn't been significant in terms of the numbers. But we will have more data on that as we're continuing to work on our DEI dashboard.
Thank you.
Do we do an exit interview of all those employees who leave?
Yes, we instituted as part of our DEI strategic plan, we have instituted a exit interview process. So we do kind of two pieces, an exit survey and then an exit interview if people opt to take the interview process. And so right now, for the last quarter that we did that, we're getting data back, and that's going to be an institutional part of our process now.
And are there certain categories or certain positions that have a higher level of leaving versus others on a percent basis?
Yeah, for the data that we've had so far, we've had about a quarter, maybe 2 quarters of data. So we don't have really enough to really establish any strong patterns right now. Mm-hmm. I think the most significant thing that we can see is that the people who are not retiring, they're for the most part opting out because of lifestyle issues. So there are, kind of a combination of things. But again, it's not enough data right now to actually give you a really solid.
I guess I'm a little bit, what I'm interested in, the people who retire at their given age, which is great, is for those who are here less than 5 years, how many are there and why are they leaving?
Yeah, we'll be able to provide you that as a follow-up.
And that is going to be when?
We can actually run that data pretty quickly, so we can get that to you before the next meeting.
Thank you.
These are good areas to study in a future, work session or at the appropriate committee. But we should end this on a very appreciative note for all of our district staff who've committed so much service to the district, and to recognize some of the recipients in this room, including our presenter who presented this item and prepared the slideshow, who received a 5-year service recipient award. And also, and that's Chad Thigpen, and then Joey Smith, who's in the room, who received a 30-year award. So just another round of applause for the people who are here. And my apologies if I missed anybody who's in the room, but I think it's, we did used to recognize people in the room. We're not quite doing all of that these days, but we do appreciate those that we can get to meet and thank.
Okay, and finally, at your places, we left you our new water bottles. They do have it's our logo and information on conserving water. We also have right at the front, if you can grab a handful to share with your constituents. This is a flyer on our 100th birthday celebration at Lake Temescal on May 21st. So we have that printed out. And also at your places is a speakers bureau. We did try to, we have 2 versions. One is just all in chronological order. Another one, we did group it. We created some categories to try to make it a little clearer what the events are. So the categories we created are, is it a coordination meeting? Coordination meetings are generally just between staff and other groups. There are events, there are networking activities, presentations, public meetings, sponsorships, and tours. So any feedback on how we grouped it or how we're showing it, let me know, and then we can update this. But this is a new format that we're sharing just to make it a little clear. All the events are going on at the district.
Are we paying for it?
The beer is being made by Drake's Brewery, and some of the excess that they're making is going to go to our CAP program. They're charging for it. This is not free. They're charging for the beer. I'm sure they're going to be making something off of it, but they will donate a portion of that to our CAP program.
Can we get this as a PDF?
We can get you. Can we get that as a PDF, Kelly?
So I can mail that out. Yeah, thank you.
I had a discussion with staff during our breaks, and they're very, very prepared for public outreach. So I think we'll be getting some support for helping get the word out over the next few weeks, and we might even maybe we'll have an update about the program at our next board meeting so that we can all be prepared. And if there's anything during committee reports from our Centennial Committee, feel free to jump in. But our next item is reports and director comments. The minutes from the April 11th, 2023 Planning Committee and Legislative Human Resources Committee meetings were included in your packet. The board met this morning for long-term water supply workshop number 2, where staff reviewed updated regulations regarding water conservation, provided updates on the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan and voluntary agreements, and the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project, and review topics covered during the long-term water supply workshop held on February 28th of this year. So we will now receive reports from this morning's Finance and Administration Committee meeting. Director Patterson.
Yes, the Finance Committee met this morning. They covered the monthly investment transaction report and the quarterly financial reports, the payroll distribution real estate summary report for the water and wastewater systems for quarter ended March 31st, 2023, and the quarterly investment report March 31st, 2023. Those items were sent forward with a recommendation. You approved them on the consent calendar, and that is the report.
Thank you, Director Patterson. We move, are there any other committee reports that I might not have mentioned? Didn't think so. Number 19, other items for future consideration. Please submit any to the general manager. And that takes us to number 20, director comments. Thank you if you've already submitted your written comments to the secretary. I see Director Young, and then I'll take any other verbal director comments.
So I tried to get attention through heads for a question a bit ago, but
sorry, this is a very difficult linear pattern here.
On the 100th anniversary party, I noticed the QR code for registration. Is registration required? No, it's not. We're just trying to get a Okay, I just, it's not, I would hate to have people think that they have to register to show up, or that if people show up, we're going to turn them away. We're not turning anybody away. Okay, good. And can we get this as a phone-friendly flyer as well, so that it, people can, we can share it that way. So what I wanted to report on was the visit to our very own Super Bloom last Saturday. Got the opportunity to join some of our constituents and staff and volunteers on a tour of Skyline Gardens off of it's in Scott Gate.
Scott Peaks Gate, yeah.
Scott Peak Gate, which is just at the apex before you head over to the steam train. So it's it's really at the border between Alameda and Contra Costa counties. It's in my ward, but just an amazing array of plants and flowers in bloom, and a true hallmark of dedication by the volunteers that have spent pretty much the last 6 years now taking what was once what you'd expect, a brown hillside and ridgeline, and eradicating non-native species and allowing the native species to flourish, while at the same time creating and sustaining an active field break. I think there are 291 plant species represented. More than half of those are not found anywhere else in the East Bay or maybe California. Really pretty incredible place, and if you have the opportunity to hook up with the Native Plant Society and the folks that are working on it for 6 hours of volunteer work, you get a really cool hat. It's definitely worth going to.
Thank you. Any other director comments? Director Coleman?
It hasn't been announced, but I announced it at the Drought meeting last night, which April was in attendance with me. Florence Weddington, who works here, was appointed last week as a director at the Central Sand Board, filling the seat of David Williams, who had worked here, who then ran for that seat and passed away a month and a half ago, thereabouts. So Florence is now wearing multiple hats, and I guess her ward, my ward, or her district, my ward overlap. Looking forward to working with her in that capacity. And I'm going to go back to the birthday thing. I guess I just looked, there's no cost to attend the birthday fair, which is great. So you said that we're buying the beer and wine since there's no cost.
They're selling the beer and
They're selling it. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, so people may want to be aware of that who register, so they know to bring a wallet and ID versus just showing up thinking they don't need it for whatever reason.
So when attendees show up to buy the alcohol, they will get a commemorative cup that will be paid for. But yes, I mean, we can put something out announcing that people should probably bring an ID if they're going to attend.
In a way, they're going to pay for the alcohol as well.
Right.
And the food.
Right. It's food trucks.
Food and beverages are not. It's food trucks and.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because looking at this, I didn't realize that there was a charge, and I looked at the registration. It said no fee to register. So
sure.
You don't want people getting up there and going, wait,
right.
I don't get to participate like everybody else who brought money and ID.
Sure, we can send out that reminder. No problem.
Any other comments? Okay. Seeing no further comments, then the next regular meeting of the board will be held on Tuesday, May 9th, 2023 at 1:15 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned.